Most people think they're struggling with English. They're actually struggling with something else entirely. Like, the weird thing isn't vocabulary, it's what English does to your personality.
Yeah, it completely shifts who you are in the room, and it happens in like a split second.
Welcome back to English Unfiltered. Today we are taking a deep dive into something so incredibly frustrating, but, so rarely talked about. We've got this huge stack of research in front of us today. Papers on cognitive load, behavioral psychology studies, and some really fascinating notes on how culture affects communication. And our mission today is to figure out exactly why you lose your authentic self, your wit, your fire, your whole vibe, really, when you have to argue or defend yourself in a second language.
It is a profound psychological shift, and it just leaves so many people feeling totally defeated, right? Walking away from conversations feeling like a literal shadow of themselves.
Right. Because there is a very common narrative out there. When a discussion gets heated and you suddenly freeze up, what do you immediately think? You think, I just don't have the right vocabulary. You blame your dictionary.
That is the immediate reflexive thought. You think, if I just knew more words, I could have won that argument. But looking through all these behavioral studies, vocabulary is rarely the real problem. The true culprit is a hidden psychological gap between your identity and the language itself.
A gap between identity and language. I mean, maybe, but native speakers do seem incredibly dominant in these high-pressure moments. Doesn't that just come down to them knowing more words?
You'd think so, but no. Yeah. It's actually not because they have a better vocabulary. And it's definitely not because they're inherently smarter or better debaters. There's a hidden behavior at play here, like a specific way they navigate the conversation that gives them the upper hand.
Wait, really? A hidden behavior. Okay, hold on to that thought because I want to know exactly what that is. But first, I want to talk about how this identity gap actually feels in real life. I want to paint a picture for you, the listener. Imagine you are in a high-stakes meeting, or maybe just a really intense dinner party conversation, right? Someone unfairly challenges your idea. They dismiss something you know a lot about. Now, if this is happening in your native language, you are ready.
Oh, yeah, you are witty, you are persuasive.
Exactly. I used to work with this guy, let's call him Mateo, brilliant engineer. In Spanish, his native language, the guy was a literal force of nature. If you challenged his code, he would systematically, hilariously, and brilliantly take your argument apart. He had this incredible charisma. But the second we stepped into an English-speaking board meeting, if someone pushed back on his ideas, he wouldn't fire back. He'd get quiet, he'd become overly polite, he would use these really soft, cautious sentences.
He's filtering himself.
Completely. And you could see it in his eyes. The arguments were razor sharp in his head, but they were getting caught somewhere in his throat.
And then comes the aftermath. Like, the meeting ends, you walk away, and you have that universal agonizing thought that every single second language speaker has had. You think, that is not what I really wanted to say.
That wasn't me.
Yes. You walk away feeling like an imposter in your own profession. The research we're looking at introduces a concept that perfectly captures this. They call it the safe mode phenomenon.
Safe mode, like when your computer crashes and restarts with bare minimum graphics.
Exactly like that. When you feel socially threatened or highly emotional, your brain unconsciously adopts a protected, watered-down version of yourself. You avoid strong opinions. You start overusing polite, safe language. And you constantly monitor every single sentence before you say it.
It's like, you know what it's like. It's like driving a high-end sports car but leaving the parking brake engaged. You've got this massive V8 engine under the hood. Your thoughts are complex. Your expertise is deep. And you are still moving forward, right? You can explain the facts. You can answer the basic questions. But all the power, all the torque, all the personality is just choked out by the brake. You're burning so much fuel just to go 10 miles an hour.
I love that analogy. You're burning through the brake pads. And it's exhausting. The tragedy here is that the person speaking no longer feels like the same person. Your real personality is buried behind this thick layer of linguistic self-protection.
That is the most painful part of this whole deep dive. It's not just an English issue, it's a crisis of identity. You're sitting there watching yourself be boring or passive or overly agreeable, and inside you're screaming like, I am actually really funny. I am actually really assertive.
I experienced this firsthand a few years ago when I was living abroad. I was renting this apartment, and the heater broke in the middle of winter. The landlord was trying to blame me for it. Now, in English, I would have set strict boundaries immediately. I would have cited the lease. But in that moment, in my second language, I found myself nodding, apologizing.
Oh my God, no.
Yes. I walked away furious, not just at the landlord, but at myself. Safe mode had completely overwritten my actual personality.
Okay, but I don't get it, though, what is actually happening in the brain. Because it's so strange. You can speak perfectly fine about facts, like Matteo could give a 30-minute technical presentation in English flawlessly. Why does a slight disagreement completely break the brain's ability to communicate?
Well, it comes down to a cognitive split. Let's look at the mechanics of what is actually happening in your head. In your native language, your brain focuses 100% of its energy on the ideas, the language itself. It's entirely automatic. You don't think about grammar when you're angry. But in a second language, part of your mental energy is permanently assigned to managing the language. You're checking grammar, searching for prepositions, monitoring your tone.
Even if you are highly fluent.
Even if you've spoken it for 20 years, there is always a processing tax. And this creates a tiny, invisible delay between your thought and your expression.
Like a lag on a video call, when you're talking to someone and there's that half-second delay, so you end up awkwardly interrupting each other.
Precisely. That lag is happening inside your own cognitive process. And here is where the research highlights something totally counterintuitive. The stronger the emotion, the bigger that gap becomes.
Wait, I don't buy that entirely. Usually when I'm mad, the words just fly out. Adrenaline takes over.
Right.
Why would passion slow me down?
Because we're not talking about screaming in traffic. We're talking about high-level, professional, or social disagreements. Adult arguments require incredibly precise language. When you are passionate or defensive, your brain generates highly complex, nuanced thoughts very quickly. But your language processing center can't keep up with that sudden emotional surge. The thoughts are moving at 100 miles an hour, but the vocabulary retrieval is still moving at 50, so the delay actually widens.
Wow. That is wild and so unfair. The more I care about the topic, the more my brain betrays me.
Yeah, because high-stakes emotional defenses require emotional precision and spontaneity. Those are the exact two things destroyed by your brain's internal translation delay. You lose the spontaneity because you are constantly buffering. You lose the precision because you ultimately just settle for whatever simple words you can find fast enough to fill the silence.
Which explains why Matteo was so good at presentations. This makes perfect sense now. When you are prepping for a meeting, you have time. There is no delay. You write the notes, you practice the slides, you feel incredibly intelligent. But during the unscripted, emotionally charged Q&A at the end,
you're preparing for a choreographed dance, but you walk into a boxing match. And in a boxing match, a half-second delay means you get hit. You can't choreograph a defense.
Okay, this brings me back to what you teased at the very beginning. You said native speakers have this hidden behavior. And if it's not their giant vocabulary, what exactly are they doing? Why are they dominating the argument while everyone else is stuck in safe mode?
It's all about how they manage that delay. Or rather, how they don't have one. The hidden truth about native speakers is that they rarely pause to search for the perfect sentence. They aren't constantly self-monitoring.
You just go.
They just go.
Yeah.
They communicate first and they refine later. If you really listen to a native speaker argue, they will start a sentence without having any clue how it's going to end. They will talk in circles. They will use filler words. But what they don't do is stop and internally translate. Their confidence emerges from their willingness to speak, not the accuracy of their words.
Oh man, that is so true. Think about any transcript of a native speaker arguing on live television, or even just a recording of a heated meeting. If you read it on paper, it is a grammatical disaster. It's messy, it's fragmented, it barely makes sense.
It's chaotic. Half the sentences are unfinished.
But in the moment, in the room, it feels powerful. Because of the momentum.
Yeah.
Which really exposes a massive false assumption people have, this belief that you need sophisticated, advanced vocabulary to sound confident. We all fall for it. We think, if I just knew bigger words, if I could just drop a perfectly timed idiom, people would respect my argument more. Mm-hmm. But reading through these behavioral studies, what is the reality?
The reality is that fluency is not the same as identity. Many of the most powerful, persuasive communicators in the world use incredibly simple language. Their strength is clarity, not complexity.
Clarity over complexity.
Always. The research points out something that I think fundamentally shifts how we should view this. Simple language delivered confidently is usually more persuasive than advanced language delivered hesitantly.
Simple language delivered confidently is usually more persuasive than advanced language delivered hesitantly. Let that sink in for a second. If you are listening to this and you constantly feel like your English isn't smart enough for a heated debate, you don't need smarter words. You need more conviction behind the simple words you already have.
Exactly. You do not need perfect English to express conviction. Look at some of the most effective leaders globally who speak English as a second language. They aren't using SAT vocabulary words, they use basic foundational words, but they deliver them with absolute certainty. They don't pause.
So if I'm stuck in safe mode at a dinner party and I feel that parking brake engaging, how do I actually fix this in the moment?
You have to learn to tolerate imperfection.
Tolerate imperfection. Give yourself permission to be a little messy.
You have to. The problem isn't your English, it's your anticipation. It's that tiny moment of hesitation where you second guess your own sentence before you even speak it. When you mentally translate every emotional reaction in your head before opening your mouth, you are the one creating that additional delay. You are the one pulling the parking brake.
So the advice is literally just start talking.
Just start. Use the simple language you already have. Do not wait for the perfect sophisticated sentence to form in your mind, because by the time it does, the moment has passed. The argument has moved on, and you're left holding a perfectly grammatical sentence that no one cares about anymore. Speak with the words you have, but deliver them with your authentic conviction.
You know, it's funny. We spend years studying grammar rules, terrified of making a mistake. But nobody in a heated argument actually cares about your grammar. They care about your presence.
Yes, you are sacrificing your identity on the altar of grammatical accuracy. And it is not worth the trade. When you argue, people respond to your energy, your tone, your eye contact. If you are focused on whether you use the right preposition, your energy drops, your eyes look away as you think, and you lose the room.
Okay, this feels like a massive shift in perspective. If we zoom out and look at the ultimate goal here, it's not about becoming more aggressive, and it's definitely not about trying to win every single argument.
No, not at all. It's about participation.
Right, and it is absolutely not about trying to sound exactly like a native speaker. That's a trap. The real goal is just to sound like yourself.
A more fluid version of yourself. A version of you that can think and disagree and persuade and connect without feeling trapped between two different identities. There's a brilliant insight from one of the linguistic psychologists we reviewed. They essentially said, real fluency is not about becoming someone else. Real fluency is about becoming more fully yourself in another language.
That is a beautiful way to frame it. You aren't building a second personality from scratch. You are just trying to unlock your true personality in a new medium.
Exactly. The personality is already there. You just need to stop guarding it so fiercely.
Okay. So, I love this. You drop the safe mode, you stop the internal translation, you tolerate the messy grammar, you use simple words, you speak your truth, you are fully authentically yourself in the meeting, you are ready to take on the world.
You feel triumphant. You've conquered the psychological barrier.
Right. But there's a catch.
There is always a catch.
There is a massive complication in these notes that we have to talk about, because just when you think you've solved the internal psychological puzzle, the external cultural reality hits you like a truck.
And this is where things get really complex and honestly a bit messy. Because we just spent all this time saying, be direct, show your conviction, don't water yourself down, stop filtering yourself.
Drop the filter.
Right. But disagreement styles vary wildly across cultures. Wildly. And the reality is many English-speaking cultures, particularly in the UK, parts of the US, Canada, heavily value indirectness. They value diplomacy. They heavily value emotional control in professional settings.
Yes. Oh man, this is the ultimate paradox, because what sounds strong and confident in your native language, say in Russian or Hebrew or German, might be perceived as deeply aggressive in an English-speaking corporate environment.
Exactly. You finally figure out how to bypass your brain's translation delay. You finally speak with your true emotional fire, and the native English speakers in the room look at you like you just threw a chair through a window.
I've seen this happen. I had a friend from the Netherlands who moved to London. In Dutch culture, being direct is a sign of respect. You tell someone their idea is bad so they can fix it. So she goes into a London meeting, drops the safe mode, and says, that idea will not work. Here's why. And the entire room just froze.
Because in their culture, you don't say that idea is wrong. You say, I'm not entirely sure that's the most optimal approach. Perhaps we could explore other options. Which, to someone from a direct culture, sounds like you are trapped in safe mode.
It sounds so weak. It sounds like you lack confidence.
It sounds weak to you. But in the English-speaking culture, that indirectness isn't weakness. It's the expected social code. It's how they show respect while disagreeing. They soften the language purposely to protect the relationship. Learning these social rules is crucial, Because if you don't, you run the risk of alienating people, not because your English is bad, but because your cultural tuning is completely off.
So wait, you finally figure out how to stop filtering your personality, only to realize the culture might require you to filter it anyway just to survive socially? That is maddening.
It's a very delicate balance. You have to preserve your authenticity, your core identity, while simultaneously adapting to these unspoken cultural expectations of politeness. Fluency changes the type of fear. It goes from, am I using the right word, to, am I using the right tone for this specific culture?
How do you even do that? How do you balance being your true self with a culture that speaks in secret codes of politeness? How do you stay authentic when the language itself demands diplomacy? Well, honestly, that's a whole different conversation.
It really is. It changes the whole landscape of what it means to be a skilled communicator.
It really does. It means true fluency isn't just about vocabulary or even just about psychological identity. It's about reading the room on a deep cultural level. So, as you go into your next meeting or your next dinner party, pay attention to the gap. Notice when you start reaching for the parking brake and ask yourself, are you filtering your words because you genuinely lack the vocabulary? Or are you filtering them because you're afraid to be yourself in English? Keep observing the hidden rules of communication around you.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.